Ladies and gentlemen of the crypto space, we're live on a Wednesday, October 2nd at 11:02 a.m. We have made it to October. That is Q4 2024. Now, we look at very high time frame charts. Often really look at quarterly, do we? Actually, all things considered, should probably adjust a little bit how I look at technicals. I tend to prefer monthly, 6-month, yearly charts. But we do often speak about quarterly, so I should probably start to include 3-month inspection in my daily routines. Hmm, not bad making an observation on stream, live on stream. Okay, so what I want to do this stream is talk about everything that's going on in the world. How is the captain cool, calm, and collected with all the shit that's going on? What do I think about what runs the captain? And to start with that, look through some of my posts because posts are an expression of what I'm thinking. It helps me jot down my thoughts in my head, solidifies them, documents them, shares them. So let's go through them. And we'll get to the charts and we'll talk about the description of today's stream that is always relevant. It's obviously a topic we've covered before, but maybe it'll be more relevant. You'll appreciate it that much more considering what's going on. And it'll probably flow off the technical analysis. In any regard, maybe I'll skip over this post and we'll get over to technicals in a couple minutes. But we're experiencing a sharp reversal of the dollar to the upside. The dollar's strength. The dollar will fail. Even it's me saying over the next 10 years, the dollar will depreciate. But now, on this relatively short time frame, a weekly inspection, we have a sharp reversal with the dollar, the DXY smacking into the 10 on the weekly. We'll get to it. Patience. So, couple of thoughts this morning. Let's go through them. They said, own nothing, be happy. Why is everyone complying, choosing to own nothing? Such a compliant population. So much fear, so much thought, so much, uh, so much time people spend trying to make choices, and so much frame of reference. This frame of reference of the dollar, the value of the dollar denominated value of assets, the correlation, the fear of the correlation between US equity markets and crypto markets, for instance. Just as I get older, the more and more I think about it, one, it's what everyone thinks about. And that just further reinforces to me that it's irrelevant, wrong. It's the wrong way to think. It's not healthy. It's not sustainable. Now, obviously, there's an implication with regard to depreciation that factors into my capital management methodology, and that will get better over the coming years, in my opinion. I always learn from my past behaviors. And the next opportunity I have to best express that is when we have a strong bear market, when prices are at a discount. So obviously if prices are down, I don't fear depreciation. I want to buy things when they're the cheapest possible. So price goes down means nothing with regard to things that I own because the things that I own are meaningful to me. They're an expression of who I am. So I don't just, it's like the sentiment that the NFT folks have, or at least the non egregiously speculative NFT folks. Obviously folks panic and they lose everything, locking in losses, so on and so forth. But there's a large community of NFT folks that just want to own it. They want to own things. They want to own something. And they end up ascribing value to it. And they debate and talk about how do you ascribe value to an image or EFP, even part of a collection. And folks often say the one offs are more meaningful. Okay. Okay. What's pertinent is someone is ascribing value to something irrespective of price. And then where I come in is Did you overpay for it or did you get a discount? So that becomes the only part or how I factor in the dollar value of an asset into my framework. I want to own things. I want to own more and more things. And it's literally the antithesis of what everyone's doing. Oh, I'm going to buy and I'm going to sell. Now, obviously, that's an art and that's a practice. So that's a profession. It's a business model to trade and to capitalize on all of this activity. Separate and apart is what I'm discussing. The vast majority are not qualified to do that. So what happens is at the end of the day, they end up with less assets rather than more. At the end of the day, they end up owning nothing, which is literally consistent with what the WEF has stated in policy, or at least intended policy, whatever the hell it is. Own nothing and be happy. Everyone's aware of that statement. That has circulated social media for a long time now. Own nothing and be happy. No, fuck no. I'm not going to own nothing and be happy. I'm going to own a bunch of shit. Then I'm going to be happy. I'm going to own stuff. What are we but the things we choose to own? What we own, as much as what we create, is an expression of who we are. So we need to express ourselves well. What do you believe in? What do you understand? What is your knowledge of things? And if you are expressing yourself well enough, what you own is appreciated. So all of a sudden, our DeFi assets and fintech and FX credit derivatives and liquidity financing has a common denominator with NFT art because it's something that's meaningful to you, and therefore in the future, it may be meaningful to someone else. Anyhow, I hope that helps because obviously markets are doing what they're doing, and we'll get to the technicals in a minute. We'll look at what's going on. A couple of other interesting posts. I always love referencing Immortan Joe because ultimately the reality of global economics is binary. Either the system continues or it fails and there's anarchy and chaos and you know literally kinetic war and shit like that. Oh, I like the phrasing. I tend to be crafty with my word choices. The semantics are meaningful to me. What will be already is, or if not, what it becomes governed by Immortan Joe. So, this is like Newton's deterministic universe of sorts. So that's causality is something I think about a lot. So the binary reality is either the system expands to for it to have a capacity to refinance debts, otherwise the cascade effect occurs, which is literally what started in 2008, and it happens periodically and will happen again. And but they know that will happen again, and that's why regulators are much more afraid of deflation as compared to inflation. Frankly, they're afraid of both, anything spiraling out of control, because it's all about control. Because control allows for the maintenance of normalcy, allows for the maintenance of the status quo and the shit that's going on today to persist. It's like the story I tell you guys if you wake up after an event, whether it's like a 9/11 or not 2008, like 2020 was an event where you're going to work in the morning because you're you that actually still drove to work and the roads are empty. And that's weird. And that is not maintenance of the status quo. And that has psychological implications that produces trauma. And that scars a population for a long period of time. So much of our experience, this human experience, is dependent on a continuity. It's dependent on things being basically the same shit day in and day out. And then you optimize. You try and better your life over time. But if there's a significant volatility in the human experience, that is basically what what causes trauma. Just like equity markets, we should have like a human VIX meter, a human volatility indicator, or maybe the VIX is already a human volatility indicator. Because when shit changes dramatically, it causes all sorts of knock-on effects. Except with humans, it's psychological. But then again, if you got a VIX spike and equity markets are doing some crazy shit, that causes all sorts of human psychological effects, all sorts of trauma. But there's shit outside of equities, as as according to the story of disruptions in normalcy. That certainly is a human experience volatility spike, so to speak. So this probably leads us into the title of the stream today. What Tracy said is basically the reversal of the carry trade, and it's basically the inspection that I offer from high time frame charts. Um, so if we have a secular decline in the value of the dollar relative to foreign currencies, um, that requires creditors in foreign nations, and Japan is a massive creditor, and then that credit extended is used to invest overseas, has to be unwound because what it is, foreign currencies are appreciating relative to the dollar, so it's more expensive to pay that credit back because when you sell U.S. equities, you're getting a depreciating dollar, which requires the purchase of an increasingly expensive foreign currency unit. So as the dollar declines, it forces the selling of U.S. assets. Now that is across the board. That's equities, be it Nasdaq or the S&P, whatever the hell is left in the Russell 2000 that hasn't already collapsed. Um, Residential, commercial real estate, businesses in general, not just the real estate, land, property. It's not just real estate. You could literally have plots of land, and those plots of land could be used for manufacturing facilities, which could be commercial. Could also be mining operations, like this commercial also, but it's much better talked about in terms of mining and refining and shit like that. So it forces. It's not just like opportunistically, yeah, I'm going to sell because the freaking yen is appreciating now for the first time in a decade. Um, but it's a forced sell because otherwise there's a capital loss associated with the cross currency price differential. Um, so that's generally what I expect. This is probably what Druckenmiller is talking about when he says could have a decade of nothing because he's an equities boy. He's the good old boys, and that's cool. Appreciate that. And when he says something like that, he's talking in terms of equity markets, talking in terms of his playground, his field of practice. And frankly, when he says that to me and I interpret the world the way I do in terms of cross currency uh, valuations, that's probably the same story. We could see a 10-year just gradual decline in equities prices. And clearly, equities, it's the broadest of categories, a statement that I could say. There's always outperformance, isolated outperformance. Clearly, you get some crazy news out of a stock, capital concentration. So in a broadly declining equities landscape, and all of a sudden, there's some innovative technology or a dramatic change in delivery numbers, like Tesla or Amazon invents some crazy shit, or some new company comes along and does some crazy shit, you get outside price appreciation as capital liquidates from somewhere and crowds into the trade. You always have the crowded trade process, even in a secular declining market. So I find that interesting that he said about 10-year. That's probably a hindsight observation because when he said that, I wasn't necessarily inspecting like DXY at the time and thinking about what the hell is going on over the next decade in terms of currency valuations. So that's maybe a little confluence in my mind. Maybe he was talking. from a knowledge of or a context of currency markets. So, in any regard, that's what plays out. Look at that. It's going to be a mega trend and it's a super cycle for the next 5, 10 years. T row price. So, bam. So, anytime you hear a high time frame perspective, and now you're talking about 5, 10 years, and all right, fine, but there's cycles in between there. You can have cycles. Cycles cycle along a secular trend. And look, he's throwing around the 5, 10 year line. Confluence with Druckenmiller, confluence with my inspection of the DXY. Great. So I am just more and more comfortable with where things will be in 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 10 years from now, and that just is refreshing. That and that's causal, meaning if things continue to play out like they are today, we know where we're gonna be in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It's the way it works. Otherwise, you go back to the first post of the day. It's either what I just said plays out with regard to causality, which is confluence with the dude from T Row and Druckenmiller as well, or this dude is your dude. That's it. So that reduces to the binary uh, method of inspection or the binary result of all the insane inspection that anyone can have. All the technical analysis, it's all binary, all of it. Either this is your due or you need a different way to think about things. And that's why we come back to the first post, which is maybe an overarching methodology. Clearly, I love the fuck you pay me narrative, and that's a component of it, and that just guides what to own. But this is even broader than that. It's just own stuff. What else do you do in life? I mean, clearly, be athletic, be healthy, be educated, contribute to social activity optimally in a productive fashion, which is like not necessarily even entrepreneurship, but can contribute to a small business with your work, whether it's a medium sized business or a startup. And that's important. But other than that, it's what you own. So that's a very interesting statement that I could probably conclude this train of thought on. We're not talking about consumables. We're not talking about technology like a phone or a computer or a fancy wireless stereo system, surround sound, or TVs or cars. Technically, that is stuff that is an expression of who you are, but maybe that's more of a vanity. Now, I'm clearly being critical of myself as well, given my choice of vehicle and my choice of cell phones and shit. But I do recognize that I value those things, even though I appreciate them and I get enjoyment out of them. I value those things much less than the type of investments we commonly discuss. And maybe that's something that needs to be realized. Or do you value your car more than a depreciating DeFi investment? Well, I appreciate actually the depreciating DeFi investment more. And my simple conclusion is that I bought it too expensive. I could have bought it cheaper. So how do I adjust my mentality and methodology to accommodate that? Then in the future, I already did that. I already did that. That's done. That's history. Makes no sense to be frantic and like, oh, how do I correct it? How do I undo the mistake I just did? How can I be how can I be unburdened by what has been? Chart a new path forward going from today. Learn from mistakes. Grow, evolve. And next time I'll do better. Simple as that. So that's why obviously I talk from a biased perspective because the assets I choose, the assets I own are productive. I have additional cash flow revenue streams. And therefore I have options and choices. And it's not just work and labor. So that just obviously the story gets can be expanded much more. Like how do you even think about a lot of the things we talk about. And probably the first thing there is additional revenue streams. No one ever said getting to my place, my situation with regard to capital management was easy. Certainly no bulleted list, to do check boxes to get to where I am. And I certainly am not where I would love to be, where I would hope to be. I'm certainly not as well off as so many more. I, I'm well off compared to many, obviously. I'm literally just like not even close to 1%. Jesus. I was like middle class. Seriously. So that's just something I recognize and I'm grateful for. I'm grateful that somehow I've been able to keep up with middle class. I'm even upper end of middle class, probably. Talk about total statistics. And I'm very comfortable in my own skin with my choices. That's something everyone really needs to achieve. You need to be comfortable. That's why I talk often about wake up money. And it's all about your mentality. And don't be self degrading. Don't be your own worst enemy. Mistakes are not bad. Mistakes are how you grow and how you do better. The only bad choice is doing the same shit over and over again and not being critical. And by not evaluating what the results were of choices to see if different choices are more appropriate next time. Because there's always a next time. Got plenty of life ahead of you. Most of my population, my viewer population, is in their like 30s and 40s, according to the statistics. You're literally in the same boat as me. So, what will it be over the next 10 years? What will it be for you? It's going to be the same insanity, same frustration, same anxiety, same depressions, the same self self-inflicted damage of making bad choices, or find satisfaction in making good choices. Now, obviously, good choices either take time or don't produce immediate results, but that's the thing I try and drive home. The satisfaction should come from merely making the good choice. Whether my portfolio achieves what I want it to achieve or not, I find the greatest satisfaction knowing not only am I doing the best that I possibly can, I've made good choices based on good, solid decisions, good, solid research, a good, robust understanding of how this stupid system that they created actually works. For me, that's the ultimate satisfaction. 'Cause I'm right. That doesn't mean price is going to be favorable to me all the time, but I know I'm right. Listen, that I always come back, and I'll end on this, and then we'll go to the charts. We lost a fair amount of capital back in like 16 with an outsized investment in a lithium refiner, Damasco Lithium. It was a hostile takeover by private equity, and they literally drove up the employment price in the local region such that they couldn't complete timelines and they just didn't have the capital for the employment. It's literally just the cruelest hostile takeover. Bankruptcy, all retail investors were totally liquidated. Especially in hindsight, it's the right investment. Over allocated, over concentrated. But man, that was a good investment. And that still is one of the greatest projects in the Western Hemisphere in the lithium sector. The coming 20 years, it's mission critical. Goddamn good investment. And that's something I remind myself of. Yeah, sure, there was a capital loss associated with it, but the issue wasn't me in my inspection of the investment. It was how I executed it in the position size and the overall composition of what I do regarding capital management. It wasn't a bad investment. It's one of the best investments, one of the best observations I've ever had. And now Nowadays, it's like, can I have exposure to that investment? Yeah, it's so in now that that project has been completely absorbed by the biggest of players. I believe it's owned in good part by Livent. It's just literally as big as it gets. So you got this big corporate shit with all this equity out there, all their dilution capacity, and you basically own nothing. Basically, you don't have a capacity to own it, and certainly not access its revenue. Well, that revenue is going to be gobbled up by the corporation that owns it. So now it's completely uninvestable. Back then, you had direct shares of the company and the entrepreneurs that tried to build it. It was then investable, no longer is. Any regard, I am unburdened by what has been. Oh dear, Lord help me. Oh my, oh my. Anywho, all right, here we go. Here we go. Let's do it. Where are we? And we'll do comments as well. Maybe I'll do comments real quick because there's only a few today. If you're on X or you're on Twitter, say hi. Just say hi. Ask some questions. Well, how you faring in this insanity we call the human experience in these crypto markets, which certainly have a capacity to drive folks nuts. Raul's in the house. Hello, Gazika. Greetings, Cap. Uh, Yao? Yeah. Yeah. I think it's Yao. I'm sorry. I apologize, but what's up? Good morning, Cap. Senor Barata. Okay, I got that part right. Sir Joe, present. Crypto Blunder, good morning. Nick Bud, hey Cap, what's your thoughts on Curve right now? Curve is iterating from a technology standpoint way above par of its peers. Um, it's one of my favorite investments, period. And clearly, when what I just described about Namaska, it's irrelevant. Price action is irrelevant because I think everyone else is wrong, um, and I sleep very well with that opinion. And there's plenty of other great tech, plenty of other investments. Hence, I have a relatively robust portfolio, but my Curve investment is something I'm very proud of for understanding the way macroeconomics works, the relationship between the DeFi space and macroeconomics, the way currencies work, cross currencies between nations, but also, you know, I, with regard to internal currency uh, realities. Like, what is the dollar to the US is one story versus what is the dollar to the rest of the world? And how does the dollar relate between the US and the rest of the world? That's all entire stories to be told. So, literally, you're at the crossroads of all of that conversation. And that probably the best expression I have with regard to dollars, dollar liabilities, and the most interesting thing going on in the world with dollar liabilities is a capacity to create liabilities using credit in some way that is better than what historically exists. Now, there's plenty of that in the crypto space, but each one is an experiment, and each experiment has traction, has lendiness, has trust, has capitalization, consumption. Curve USD is probably one of my most favorite. As by inspection, it is the one I am most intrigued by. The behavior and how people are using it and its properties. And I have a high opinion of many dollar liabilities in the crypto space. So that is part of that conversation. What are your thoughts on Curve right now? I have a high opinion of Curve right now. Explicit answer. Hope that helps, Nick. John, good morning, Cap. Any thoughts on Beethoven, Balancer? Yes, they're old school. They from last cycle. Well aware with Beethoven, extremely depressed price action, but lots of innovation, large liquidity stake narrative for Sonic, cheap or too pricey for the risk. Unknown. I'm not looking at it. I haven't inspected Beethoven in a long time. Generally speaking, everything on Phantom is depressed. Um, what will outperform is unknown speculation, particularly because of such low capitalization on Phantom. Now, that is probably best expressed in terms of how how capital flows uh, have a capacity to monetize Phantom. Now, historically, a depressed market uh, with frictions eliminating over and over again between these markets, the outsized returns on Phantom are quite extraordinary. Phantom is one of the original crazy exuberant chains back in 21. And man, that was spicy. So I think things will do well on Phantom. That's your maximum risk, maximum return type of network because you have literally DeFi, one of DeFi's greatest names behind everything that's going on Phantom. That's just a reality. So, what would I say in terms of how I manage capital? I have exposure to Phantom. Am I satisfied with my exposure to Phantom? I probably am underexposed to Phantom, and that doesn't mean FTM. I have my rules and regulations regarding what I can and cannot purchase. So I'm probably underexposed, and that's okay. I'm hoping that Kingdom offers exposure to Phantom, and I get some additional exposure. I'm not in a position to deploy additional capital to Phantom. Don't want that kind of risk right about now. Um, but I have a very high opinion of Phantom. Notice that I'm not talking in terms of Beethoven because if Phantom monetizes, what happens to Beethoven? It's a beta play and multiples compared to Phantom's monetization. I'm much more interested in thinking of these networks as markets. So that's why I'm so interested in the Japan carry trade reversal. It's the demonetization of US markets and the monetization of emerging markets. It's the capital outflow from the United States into foreign markets. And that's very interesting. And there's a reason why crypto markets have broadly been a bull market when that occurs because they're emerging markets. Duh. Asun, good morning. How are you? Joel, morning cap, Kazika, do you have concerns regarding Middle East situation? Of course, volatility, volatility. I mean, literally, by definition, what's occurring, the kinetic events is existential volatility or population volatility, political it's volatility. Volatility is volatility. Yeah, quite concerned. That's probably the only thing that can be said in response to such a question. Am I frantic? Probably not. I don't know how I'd be in a extremely escalated environment, but I am certainly not frantic. Am I concerned? Of course, any rational person would be concerned. Frank Toscano, good morning. Thanks as always. What is the next crypto or next emerging tech market within crypto? What are we missing similar to not being in digital assets 2014 to 2016 blind spots? Well, 2014-16 is irrelevant compared to crypto today. I often talk about prior to 2020, nothing that any anyone that comes into crypto nowadays, anything they're looking at, other than Bitcoin and Ethereum, didn't exist in its same form prior to 2020. It's a completely different market mathematics or reality to these markets prior to 2020. What emerged post 2020 did not exist. It was an inflection point in anything that anyone could think of with regard to investment theses. They these markets emerged. Crypto prior to that was might as well been shitcoins on equity markets or penny stocks or 80s folks or old school equities folks. And, there was no equity. It was the ICO craze, which was nothing. It's literally had overtones of NFTs to a degree. There was nothing. There was no substance. There was no market. It was literally just, I'm going to make a coin, try and make a business, which is really just like an IPO, thus an ICO, which is a capital raise of sorts. And the businesses all failed, and they didn't. Nothing came of it, and it was just, in some regards, fraudulent activity to do such a capital raise, and that was pre 2019. That's what it was. All this tech that emerged post 2019 started maybe 2017. Started like Bancor was one of the first. From Bancor, probably led to Uniswap in many regards. I think that that is how certainly Bancor remembers it. And Aave was around. I believe they started in 17 also. And clearly, Lend, it's called Lend, back in 2019, and then Lend converted to Aave in 2020. But this was all prior to 2020, and just prior to 2020, and like H2 2019 was when it was the Cambrian explosion. When Uniswap V1 had a $500,000 on it, that shit was crazy. Instead of 500,000 in 2019, V1, that was crazy that you can exchange or trade directly with Ethereum contracts. That was wild. So you can't compare what's going on today and what will occur in the next before 2030, heading into 2030, to 2014, 2016. What you can start thinking about is what emerged post 2020 or post 2019, so as in 2020 till today, in terms of what will likely play out up and leading into 2030. So clearly, we have these stable coins are wild. I remember when stable coins were first talked about, like in 17-ish. A lot of USDC, a lot of USDT back then as well. And it was like, fuck is a dollar? Why do I want a dollar in crypto? It made no sense because that was all a centralized exchange type of perspective that people had in their mind. But now you literally have a dollar in crypto, but it's not a centralized exchange. It's literally self custody of a dollar liability. And then you realize that bank deposits are dollar liabilities and everything's a dollar liability, except now that I have control over that dollar liability, not a third party banking entity. So that is probably the biggest offering. That's why I literally try and hit home on that so often. The biggest product. Oh, let's talk about that. The biggest product. Yeah, I repeat often, there's only four products in these crypto markets: FX, uh, uh, credit, derivatives, and liquidity financing. Our dial liability is part of credit. It's like a subset of credit because credit's Aave, but I mean, Aave does have Go, but is Go credit? What is credit? Because if you're borrowing an asset on the books, is that credit? Because Go is you have to have collateral, which puts an asset on the banks, the Aave balance sheet, and then they're able to print the liability, which is Go. So different types of credit, and there's nuance to it. So maybe we can expand it to 4.5. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the crypto space, we are expanding the product suite available to crypto markets to 4.5. FX credit, which has a subcategory of dollar liability, 0.5 because it's a subcategory of credit, and obviously the rest. I like that because if you're providing collateral and borrowing another collateral, it's not printing of a liability. I think that is a decent way to look at subtleties in the crypto credit. So, what is the next crypto it's irrelevant. The next crypto is crypto. It's already here. These markets have not nearly achieved what they're capable of from a product market fit standpoint. These just literally banks. That's what folks don't appreciate. Why I always am so expressive that this isn't crypto. Crypto isn't crypto. The bank that you could never own historically, and now you can. Except now it's just software, so there's no people, there's no real estate, there's no infrastructure, no OpEx, no CapEx, no benefits, no salaries, no nothing. Software. It changes everything. This is the automation. Everyone's talking about the port strike, and they're trying to defend themselves against the automation of the ports like they do in China. It's literally all remote controlled there. And that's literally what crypto is. It's complete automation of financial infrastructure, fintech. And the most core of historic fintech, the freaking banks that not only have a capacity to offer credit in terms of assets, but credit in terms of the printing of liabilities, which is very consistent with double entry accounting. Not just very, it literally is double entry accounting. The capacity, or frankly, the need to print liabilities to balance books. Want to balance books is in consideration of double entry accounting, and you got excessive assets, you need to print some liabilities. That's what a stablecoin is. Um, so what is the next crypto? That's what everyone I remember when I was younger, that's what people often talked in terms of. What is the next Facebook? What's the next MySpace? Facebook. All right, fine. But that's doesn't occur like that with regard to ongoing disruptions. Ongoing disruptions are historically never disrupted until there's capitulation, um, and that is very rare. And then it's like a secular versus cyclical type of conversation. So it's irrelevant to think in terms of the next crypto when crypto is not even started. It hasn't started. That's probably the biggest takeaway. Hope that helps, Frank. Teddy, the pager attacks on Hezbollah included crypto wallets for years, reports of three-letter agencies infiltrating manufacturing. I imagine these are many wallets are compromised to also steal keys. Well, my man, that is some seriously depressing shit. Use a paper wallet? I mean, literally all a wallet is just the public key, which is not a private key, but these are very big numbers. I mean, if you're afraid that much, it's complicated. Frankly, there's ways around that fear. So keep going and find solutions to what you are most uncomfortable with. Find solutions to what you are most afraid of, and always proceed forward. That's my best advice in that regard. Joel, someone recommended to me to watch crypto if I wanted advantage PvP day trading, but I must ask the captain first your recommendations. Volatility in crypto is often outsized compared to equity markets. Volatility can be captured by trading. Trading isn't trading. These words are confusing, especially to people trying to get into capital management. Trading is okay, fine. PvP, like you says, player versus player. It's you want to buy something before other people buy it so you can capture their capital. And we do that in terms of looking at order books, looking at volume, looking at forward looking indicators that suggest, all right, if I buy now and all this order book is there, there's less likelihood that it goes down because people are also buying. And if outsized volume is there, you can get a little bit of exuberance, which drives in capital. And then you get a move to the upside, which maybe creates a liquidation cascade, and you get an outsized move to the upside, and bam, you're able to capture a 10% delta at 20 leverage. So now you made a significant outsized return because of uh, strategic positioning, taking advantage of derivatives. Um, These are legitimate financial activities. It is competitive, as you said. It is player versus player. Um, it is active. You are engaging the market. You are putting in work. I don't talk about that much nowadays. I historically did. I was much less experienced in 20 and 21. And nowadays, I don't engage in that activity. I talk about things very differently. I'm towards the older end of the spectrum of capital management and crypto. Crypto is a much it's a realm often talked about in circles of persons much younger than me, but I would be in no other place, even at my age. And I insist on engaging differently. Can people, this is probably a good uh, way to say it. Can people do, let's say you're 20, what advice would I have for a younger person? Listen, younger people, they get their first corporate job, they get set up with a 401k and they're saving. Are they saving? They're not even thinking about it. It's just automated passive. So if you want to take an active role in capital management at a young age, I would say my framework is suitable, which is a dividend investment mentality. But in these markets, the potential outsized returns for dividend investors is insane. But that's a loaded terminology. For a young person just getting out of college, what the fuck is a dividend investor? What is a dividend? What is capital earned by a corporate entity, an equity, versus capital earned by software, a smart contract? What the hell's a smart contract? How do you even begin to compartmentalize and build a framework to understand everything we've talked about over these years? My wife's ex-boss used to say, because he's older now and he retired, used to say, he wish he could dump his brain into someone else because it's just so profound the amount of information that needs to be transferred in order to literally be able to utilize all the shit that goes around in my head. So yes, a younger person in the 20s would greatly benefit from my methodology. It's like, great, for 8, 12 years, and you're compounding, you're buying assets, you're buying productive assets, you're buying positive revenue, entrenched assets that have proven lendiness, and you're buying them hopefully as cheap as possible, but you're an active manager. Literally, you're taking capital that you're earning and you're accumulating assets. And not all your assets that you accumulate are going to be great. Just like my Damascus story. It's just like how many damn crypto protocols have I made bad choices on? And that's okay. It's just like a day trader. All you need to be is right 51% of the time. And guess what? If you're buying assets and you're just owning, you want to own more and more assets, you're going to be right more than 51% of the time because that's not price action. That's not path dependent. It's destination dependent. So you have much more capacity to be right than wrong with regard to destination. So I'm not going to, maybe I don't digress into what I would tell my kids, like a 20-year-old, or what I would wish, what would be an incredible path. Right, fine, I'll tell it in hopefully as short period of time as I can. What am I currently thinking for my young children? They're young, less than 10. It's hard because I don't know what's post 2030 with regard to AI. So talked about this with my wife a couple of times. I'm like, fine, graduate college. You need base layer comprehension of things. And I think in most states they offer a decent, not only um, uh, informational education, but also a social education, decent setting. Obviously, the whole school experience is dependent on where you are, the population, the communities. So that's meaningful just as much as the content that is taught. So that's critical. So that means get through damn high school. And frankly, simple equation. You have good grades, you get free college. Get free college. Never turn down anything free. So I think that's quite reasonable. So there's literally no reason to work outside of college unless outside of high school, unless there was two things: either you are blessed at 18 and you are not a workhorse, but you've learned the things that I talk about, like 16, 17, 18, you're like, all right, fine. This totally makes sense. I understand. I have been studying and all right, fine. I get a job. Let's say an average job, Best Buy, Geek Squad, and you're making 35, 40 grand, 50 grand. What would I say if my kid was a prodigy in that regard? Like, I'm ready. I could do this, Pop. Get a job, Geek Squad. You stay at home. Son, you stay at home. You're here till you're 30 years old. 12 years. You have 12 years. You're saving your money and you are investing, and I'll help you invest. We'll talk, we'll research, we'll think about it together. We're going to buy them so you can own things. We're going to buy things for you to own, son. Now, sure. So, what does this mean? An 18, try and tell an 18-year-old, oh, you're not going out to party. You don't have any money. You have to invest. So, this is really up to the person if they have that foresight. Because if you invested, you make it 50 grand a year, which is relatively modest salary, especially in impossible to live states like California and New York. You're poor in those states, unfortunately. Um, but if you're living at home, one, it kind of works, and you're sharing, pooling resources, and even making a modest salary and just investing all of it to own things that are producing cash flow. The compound effect over 12 years, 18 to that's 14 years. I'm sorry, 12 years, 18 to 30. Um, you're done considering just what is going to go on with the global currency supply. You're done at 30. And that's just on a modest salary without even a college education. You, the amount of compounded capital over 12 years in these crypto markets, that's insane. So I think about that so often. And I've tried to tell some young cousins, and they just don't get it. Because when you're that age, it's the whole girl thing. And that's literally all he does. And I'm trying, dude, you could be retired by 30, but not retired. Go to college, pick up a trade, and live life well. So the burden here is that all comes from hindsight. Like my wife's old boss can't dump your brain into someone else and tell an 18-year-old you can be so well off at 30 if you just don't fuck it up between post 18. Anywho, I think a lot about this because of my kids. College is meaningful. It needs to be free. It's not worth the expense. You have to pay for college. It's not. No, no. Get it for free, which means literally, how do you get college for free? It's literally just do good, work hard, and you will be able to go to college for free, whether it's at a community college or another college. There's always an opportunity, and just keep going, keep doing. Anywho, that was a bit of a digression with the college component. So, but Joel was talking about take advantage of PvP day trading. So PvP day trading is a bit of a full-time job. It's a career path, which takes years to master. So I would encourage you not to, um, unless it's after 2 years of practice. I mean, how could you also day trade if you don't own anything? Meaning, you also have to be a master at owning things. Because if you're just day trading, that's not owning anything. You also need to own things. That means you have to know how to compartmentalize your capital, which also means you have to have capital. And to earn the capital from day trading without experiences, might as well put some odds on the presidential election and just gamble. It's no better. Basically, all day trading is gambling, whether the price goes up or down, or whether you're using leverage or not. And all you're doing is collecting confluence, technical indicators, and data that try and favor the odds or skew the odds in your favor. So be careful. And I don't have an easy answer to to how to become proficient in capital management. It certainly is a journey, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions and talk about this topic until everyone's questions are answered. There's a reason, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm able to talk to you like this nowadays. It's because I've answered your questions. That has made me that much better at capital management. So, as much as people thank me for answering their questions, I am very much needing to thank you for asking them. Food for thought. Gazika, how do you estimate the discount for a token? Let's say Arrow in a Arrow's at a premium. Its associated APR is still quite high and should remain for a short upcoming future. How to estimate a discount to be discount? It's at a premium. Look at all the financial activity. Look at all the hype. It's literally and constantly in a state of hype because of the arbitrage that Coinbase does. Um, it fades, so that's discount. Discount exists when all hope is lost. But hope has nothing to do with capital management. What matters is the rational inspection. So, no, Arrow is not at a discount. Adam, late but present, feeling calm with the investments I made, less calm with the wars and fourth turning shit playing out. Oh, man. I suppose a time to remember the Serenity Prayer. Serenity Prayer is the best. That's the best shit ever. Now, I'm no religious person, but I appreciate the morals. I appreciate all the ethics and the responsibility and so much about, and that's every religion. It's literally all religions. In that regard, I see all religions as pretty much the same. Ten Commandment type shit. It's literally like just be good to yourself, be good to your neighbors, treat people like you want to be treated, be freaking rational. And literally, that's what all the religions try and teach. Anyway, so this is a great religious statement, or is it? It's kind of just a rational statement. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Woosah, motherfucker. Woosah. Relax. Relax. You cannot make a good decision unless you first can clear your mind. You need to, that's why I like meditation. You need to be able to clear your mind. That's it. That's the first step. If you cannot clear your mind and you got anxieties and frustrations, you are not going to make a good decision. Always remember that. Hope that helps. Um, how do you consume information news? I follow specific podcasts and people, but where the audience capture and creating an echo chamber for myself. So I'm clearly seeing the same information you do on X. I barely follow mainstream media. It's not an echo chamber because everything that I consume, I digest. And which means anything that I consume, there's the contrarian interpretation. It's the antithesis. So that's a rational consumption, a rational inspection of information. You must always consider the opposite of what you're being presented. What is the story? Oh, all right. What's the story from the other side? And then you're like, which is more reasonable, which is more rational. And then you end up getting to a stalemate. What is good and bad? Who is good and bad? End up getting to a stalemate on a lot of these things and realize that it's an endless loop of uh, attempted logical analysis. And then you need to remind yourself that none of this is logical. Humanity is not logical, it's irrational, which means there's open ended arguments. There's not necessarily conclusions. It's insanity. Human insanity. Humans are insane. We have brief spurts of sanity, but most of everything we're discussing, most of the commentary and opinion and talking points and rhetoric is absolutely insane and will drive you nuts unless you take a step back and try and look at things as objectively as possible. I got a lot of flack in college in a philosophy class because I just went ham on the concept of objectivity. And this was literally, I was like 20 years old, 19 years old. So I was far out. I was a big pothead back then. So I love that topic. I love objectivity and Socrates, Plato, and stuff like that. Loved it. And had my time in that regard. I had a couple of good ideas when I was a kid. Modeling, objectivity. Just the people around me were not ready for those types of conversations. Try and be as objective as possible. It's impossible to be objective. We are ultimately subjective creatures. We are humans. But it counts. It counts the attempt to be objective. It counts the attempt to be rational. The attempt to be calm matters. The attempt to attempt matters. The attempt to be different matters. Be different than other people. Be different than you were yesterday, which is bettering yourself. Attempt. Dare to attempt. My man. Joel Reynolds, crypto credible. He's brilliant. He's quite astute, quite well spoken in social media commentary. I certainly enjoy what he writes. Highly skilled, highly professional, highly quantitative. So that is probably the best thing I could say. When you see what he does, there's no duplicating what he does. What he's doing is telling his story, sharing his story. Now, it is very commonplace, and I've had many people over my public career say, I want to follow in your footsteps. I want to do what you've done. That's not doesn't work like that. You cannot do what he does. Period. You need to chart your own journey, carve your own path, write your own story, which starts anytime you want, starts today. And I find that that's the only thing I could say on that. I highly value everything he says, and I'm pretty sure if I ever talked to him directly, we'd have a great conversation. His choice of words, his semantics, his writing structure means he is reserved. He's careful, calculated, thoughtful. So those are the types of people that I get along with the most. Methodical persons. uh, And the persons I fear the most are the irrational that can't provide substantiation, justification. I cannot answer questions and leave open ended arguments. That is what I fear. Hope that helps. Zeke, two unrelated questions. We're getting towards the end of the stream. I appreciate it. What are your views on Nassim Taleb works? Brilliant works. That probably the best expression of him is the curse of talk about what you know. Talk about what you know. He knows a lot of things, but you clearly see when a person gets uncomfortable talking about things they don't understand. And and clearly when someone's starting to talk like that, you're like, oh, this motherfucker has no idea what he's talking about. So that is what I've seen many a persons do on mainstream media, certainly in social media commentary. That is my opinion. Um, Clearly, he's brilliant in many regards, but he does have a tendency to talk about things he does not understand. And how do you manage? How do you manage? Do you the dilution of voting power? Irrelevant. Things are going to get diluted. So what I understand is I don't care. For instance, I own, let's say, let's say I own 0.1% of current voting power. What I know is that we're about 50% through emissions over the next 100 years, and that means the max I could get diluted is 50% plus whatever's in circulating supply, and that's it's decaying because the less and less in circulation, the less you're going to get diluted because it gets just more expensive into the future. So, there's a decaying potential for dilution. There's no cap to upside considering expansion of currency supply, which means I don't really care. That is probably the biggest thing. One of the biggest things I've learned post 2021, fearing dilution. There's a max dilution I'll experience considering the decaying emissions. That's probably the most important inspection to determine if there's actually decaying emissions. So that's it. Decaying emission schedule. Um, that's what I look for, and then that has to be successful business and functional and will last into the future. And XYZ is present. How much does it cost? How much is it paying? And how likely is it to continue paying? Immutable over immutable. Immutable over mutable. Um, so I don't mind nor think much about dilution. Hope that helps. Shana Tova, everyone. Iden, a pleasure in the house. I hope everything was cool and calm last night. I got family over there as well. I'm sure a lot of people do. And dropping shit's crazy. Uh, but everything that I said today is considerate of that as well. No matter how crazy things get, you got to be able to clear your mind because you can't make good decisions without a clear mind. Woosah. So just, I know things can get rough, whether it's capital management or geopolitical conflict, but no matter what is going on, if you cannot clear your mind and force down and control the anxiety, frustration, and the fears, no good decision could be made. Always remember that when I say something like that, I'm thinking in terms of like my kids, I guess. Anyway, I barely talked about technicals. We got to wrap this up. It's 12:09 p.m. But Bitcoin just pushed back above 62,000, which is nice and comforting. Frankly, we'll talk about Bitcoin. Obviously, curves depressed at 25 and change, close to 26 cents. Whatever. It's all about stories all about Bitcoin, and that drives basically exogenous flows into these markets, and we're nowhere near where global currency supply will be in 12 years from now. So it's almost futile to talk about that price. Topic of curve is, can you buy it cheaper? Not what the price. Oh, the price is so far down. Can you buy it cheaper? That's it. That's the whole conversation there. Gold at 2650 means everything is noise unless it goes down from here, and then we start to talk a different tone. Reversal in gold would indicate potential invalidation of a lot of things we talk about, actually. So, Bitcoin constructive first expression. Notice we do have 4 days left in the weekly close. So, the last time we encountered 10 weekly 10, we did blast right through it on August 26th. Well, that's interesting. So that's a fair bit time ago. It was over a month ago. So, and we blasted through it in a weekly candle on July 29th. Did express a little bit of support on June 10th. I wouldn't think about it too much on the upside of the 10. More interested in the downside to see a flip of expression. So notice the support expressed on June 10th was a wick through the 10. Notice there was support expressed here, obviously, on July 22nd. Wick through, break down, weakness. And now over here, August 26th was literally a bearish engulfing in the following week. You broke right through it and then it just collapsed right back down, engulfing. So that's bearishness. So this is a bit different. So we need to wait for the candle body close and follow up candles to really get a sense of what the hell is going on. But the wick is right on the 10. That's different. Different matters. These subtle inspections matter. Candles matter. So, for instance, this is the first time since the entire downslope started in April of 29, April 29th, that you have an expression of support on the weekly 10, not just a wick through and a close above the weekly 10, an actual wick right into. So that means people are sitting on the sidelines like, boom, weekly 10, buy. That's constructive because it's different. I'm curious how this week ends. You got 4 days, 8 hours left, and you need another couple of candles to really get a sense. Now, clearly, it just goes up or down. No one fucking knows. I find confluence in the fact that the 50 on the weekly is upward ascending. I find confluence that we have a bullish cross of the 100, 200 on the weekly. A lot of points of confluence. I find confluence with global cutting. I find confluence with carry trade unwind. So most folks are like, "Ooh, carry trade unwind. It's going to collapse the equities markets." The U.S. equities markets. And then there's a sentiment correlation with crypto markets. But where does the capital go when it flows offshore? This is an emerging market of emerging markets, and the crypto market is not a U.S. market at all. Correlation holds with regard to sentiment. The capital flows means they need to seek out investments. And that is crypto is a destination that will be part of that investment equation, more so now than any time in crypto's history, especially post 2020. These are now investment grade markets. These were not investment grade markets prior to 2020. It's different. It is different post 2020. These are financial markets with financial primitives, fintech businesses, banking infrastructure, FX, credit, dollar liabilities at a point 0.5, as we discussed, derivatives, liquidity financing, 4.5, 4.5 FX business enterprises in crypto that we have rationally identified over the years. Ladies and gentlemen of the crypto space, it is Wednesday, October 2nd at 12:14 p.m. I thank you all for joining me today. 201 people made it to the end of the stream. I appreciate each and every one of you. I wish you all a wonderful day. We still have another stream on a Friday. Until then, stay rational. Peace.